We
live.
are live.
It's all you, Cyber.
We are live, people. Welcome to our next new live stream. So, welcome to the MCU'S Bleeding Edge, folks out there in streaming land or wherever land you're coming from. I don't. It could be audio land. I don't know. It could be anywhere. But anyways, welcome to our MCU'S Bleeding Edge stream. We have a new special guest today that we'll be introducing, and that's my friend over here, Mr. Arch. And he's joining us to go over the amazing and awesome first film in the Infinity Saga. So since there's no awesome, Disney Plus series going on yet until Loki comes out June 9th, we're going to be doing some of the Infinity Saga reviews for you guys, just to kind of bury the hatchet and to kind of fill up some space for you guys, just to give you some more Marvel awesome content. So like I was saying, Mr. Arch over here, if I can get it correctly over here, is joining us. He has a YouTube channel and podcast that they talk a lot of cool comic book stuff, related stuff like that is joining us. Our other co-host, usually that's with us, Mr. Perry Ramsey, he unfortunately had a power outage, and hopefully he'll get to come in and join us for this review. But of course, we also have Mr. Jeff over here.
Hey, everybody.
Mr. Jeff, and he's our anchor, I would like to call, the main man himself that started this all. But like I said, we're going to be doing this awesome, amazing review of Captain America, the First Avenger, because that is the chronological order of how it starts in the Infinity Saga. So we're going to get right into that. So just to start us off, I'm going to have Jeff here drop the trailer for us, just to kind of give us a little bit of a look into the film itself before we start discussing it. So
most definitely.
Take it away, Jeff.
All right, most definitely. I got it.
Rogers, Steven.
Just give me a chance.
Sorry, son.
I'm saving your life.
General Patton has said that wars are fought with weapons, but they are won by men.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I could do this all day.
Our goal is to create the greatest army in history.
I should be going with you. Look, I know you don't think I can do this.
This isn't a back alley, Steve. It's war.
But every army begins with one man.
5 tries in 5 different cities. I can offer you a chance.
He will be the first in a new breed of super soldiers.
Why me?
Because the weak men knows the value of strength, knows the value of power.
That wasn't so bad.
That was penicillin.
We are going to win this war because we have the best men.
Now, Mr. Stark.
Nay, will personally escort Adolf Hitler to the gates of hell.
How do you feel?
It's all right.
Your task won't be simple.
Who the hell are you? The first of many.
Your enemy is not what you expect.
I don't know if I can do this.
This is why you were chosen.
What do you think?
I think it works.
Woohoo!
Oh yeah, dude. That's a dope trailer, man. Compared to the Eternals trailer, dude. That's like freaking 1,000% better.
Oh, I know. I mean, that trailer is 10 years old, so I mean, what
Hey.
does that tell you, guys?
Hey,
huh?
I'm not trying to segue too quickly here or like jump on a tangent, but I'll tell you right now, I plan on going on Rizzle tomorrow and making some videos about that Eternals trailer because that thing stinks, man. Like I'm not excited about that film at all.
Yeah, I did my review, my mini trailer reaction for it too already on Rizzle. So,
well, I hope you gave it a shitty review, a shitty friggin'
yeah,
like,
I mean, I told it basically how it was. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that Chloe Zhao. Like I said, like I've mentioned this and many other reviews I've done and so forth. That No Man Land movie, I get why it was so popular, but at the same time, I felt it should have been a documentary. Is how bad that movie was, and so. As soon as I saw the trailer for the Eternals, it like totally, I felt like I was watching that movie again. I don't know if you've watched the trailer yet, Arch. What do you think of it?
I did. So I think it looks great from the sense of like cinematography and that type of stuff. They weren't super subdued with it, so you got nothing out of the story, which I think is what they were going for, I suppose. There, but really, I mean, there's no spoilers in that trailer at all. You can watch that and you're not getting spoiled. It looks beautiful. I'll about all I can say for it. Just watching this First Avenger trailer though, I probably haven't seen this trailer in 12 years, and I just got excited all over for it. That trailer it's super intense. I really enjoyed it. I kind of want to just stop and go watch the movie now.
Right.
It's not good. Yeah.
What about you, Jeff? Does that trailer bring back those?
That was the first time I ever saw it, Cyber. That was the first time I ever saw the trailer.
Oh, seriously?
Right there. Yeah, that was it. So, like, I mean, I thought it was great. Like, I saw this film the first time probably maybe a year and a half after it came out or something, maybe, because I was kind of at that point with the MCU, like, I was kind of like, a part of it and everything and interested in it and whatnot, but I wasn't following it as closely as probably like Arch was, or maybe you were or whatever, I was kind of like really busy with work, and like at that point I had custody of my daughter, and like, so, and then I had a son, like all of a sudden, you know what I mean? And like, partial custody with him. I was really busy, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was hard for me to, like, I couldn't have done anything like this back then. Thank God, like I've got the time now to be able to like do fun stuff like this and whatnot. But yeah, man, my reaction to the trailer is just that it's like, it's a good trailer. Like, I mean, the music's good. Like, like it's an exciting trailer, and dude, compared to the Eternals, man, like the Eternals is like milk toast, like that. I mean, it's just like, I mean, I'm not trying to like be doom and gloom here, but like if I was a freaking MCU fan with no comic book experience at all, I would see that trailer and be like, okay, I don't know what this movie's about, like I don't know who the villain is, you know what I mean, like at all. I don't get what the story is. And, like, there's freaking, like, 17 different characters that make up the freaking Eternals. How the hell are they going to make that work?
Yeah, it's going to be a long movie, I have the feeling. I believe the last time I heard, it was clocking in around 2.5 hours long anyway, it's the first film. So, it'll be interesting to see how they develop that, most definitely. But going back to the First Avengers trailer, just like, Art was saying, Arch, even 10 years later, even if you're watching it for the first time like you, Jeff, it literally made me want to watch it. I actually have it playing on in the background right now because I just like to have something going in the background. And usually if we're talking about something specific, I'll have that playing in the background. But, at the same time, it's just like, you're like, wow, even 10 years later, that trailer still is very impactful. Yeah. And so well done, too, because even looking at it, I mean, that trailer does not look like it's 10 years old either. That's just how good the CGI and all the cinematography was for that film during its time. So that actually kind of brings me to the beginning of the film. So with the beginning of the film, of course, we first start out, there's these guys out in the Arctic, they're, making that circle in the ground to go down into, Captain America's ship that he crashed at the, in this film where he's been frozen. Now, my first thoughts on this was like this is an interesting way to start the film, because they really don't go into they kind of make reference that that's what they're going to find is Captain America, but they don't actually show him. They just show, oh, we're looking in the ship, we're finding something. what were your guys' first reactions to this scene? And let's start with you, Jeff.
Well, I felt like basically, I mean, my opinion on it, has kind of changed over time, like compared to when I first saw the film and where the MCU was then, and like where we're at now. You know what I mean? Like obviously, like the entrance of the film, the opening, kind of like isn't as alien to me in terms of what was going on. You know what I mean? I know the whole story, so basically. I liked it. Like I really enjoyed the opening of the film. I loved that as an opening, what they did, like with actually showing them kind of, discovering the plane, the Hydra plane from Red Skull, and then actually seeing the shield and realizing that Captain America was actually like under the ice or whatever, I guess. Like it was interesting. It's definitely an interesting way to start the movie. And it's a nice change of pace, in terms of the entire structure of the film regarding, that being the opening scene. Then you see the title shot, and then you get the meat of the film, and then you get the end credits. You know what I mean? And I think there was just the one end credits, right, Arch?
Sorry. Correct. Yeah, I believe there was just the scene. Well, this is the one that led into Avengers. So you get this scene right at the end where it just kind of flows into what's going to happen at the Avengers.
Yeah.
Unless you're counting the very end of the movie scene where he just kind of wakes up in New York. Like that was kind of the end of the movie, and right after that, it floods into basically almost a trailer for the Avengers.
Yes,
pretty much.
No, but Arch, please go ahead. Your take on the entrance, the intro of the film and everything, like the Captain America discovery.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. So this kind of ties into just how my whole experience with the entire Phase 1 section. So, I started very early. I came along and I followed like early 2000s comic books, the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, the original X-Men trilogy, those kind of things. And so when you got to the end of Iron Man 1, I promise I'm going to get back to First Avenger here. But when you got to the end of Iron Man 1 and you had that Nick Fury's of I'm here to tell you about the Avengers Initiative, and you were just like, they're going to go for Avengers? Like they're really this is something you hadn't seen before. Before that, you just had they make a movie and then they'd make a sequel, but it wasn't necessarily a big long plan or anything going on like that. So the excitement over the fact that they had this long-term vision was insane. And from then on, I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, they've got to nail Thor. How can they do Thor? He seems so crazy. I don't know how they're going to be able to get that right. Same thing with Captain America. You're like, he seems kind of goofy. I don't know how they're going to be able to do this right. So when I started watching the First Avenger and I see that opening scene and you sort of feel the intensity and the sort of realness of them finding this plane, I know what story they're going for here, and it felt so intense and good. I was like, they're going to get this right. It just made me feel excited for the entire film watching that opening.
Cyber, if you don't mind me jumping in quick, just as a remark based off of what Arch said, I think that's really, really pivotal that you brought that up, Arch. The fact that whole, the whole like concept of all of us, like our reactions or feelings, realizing that we were going to get Avengers, like on film. You know what I mean? Like, that was huge. Like, I mean, I think sometimes it's almost easy to forget that there was that like realization there for a minute where, nobody really kind of knew where the MCU was going to go kind of at first. And so when we got Avengers, that was the game changer for me that really drew my attention to the MCU and really like hooked me in, and it blew me away literally that they did the Avengers the first time. I was just like, you got to be kidding me.
Absolutely changed everything. And that was my experience. If you didn't grow up in that period, there was a whole different vibe to it where you just knew they were doing something that had not been done before. And to watch them try to put those pieces together and to make it work in a way that nobody had ever even attempted before it was thrilling to watch them do that and to have success after success and watch them hit these characters the way they needed to be hit. It was fantastic. It was just absolutely thrilling the entire time.
Most definitely.
At least for me.
Most definitely. I mean, this film also, really, was our first take on, Chris Evans version of Captain America too. You know, and that's a big step to take, you know, for this character, because this is an iconic character since the, you know, World War II that has been in comic books and been presented in such a way. Who's going to play this character, you know, the best? And, you know, they tried to, you know, bring this to the big screen back in the 90s. They had a couple, you know, Avenger films or Captain America films they called that were so hokey and so, like, made for TV that were just so bad, and you're like, okay, are they going to do that bad again? And so, but when Chris Evans really proved that he could play Captain America, that was a big presence too for this film, and just for the MCU in general too as well, because especially, you know, one thing I always forget is that Paramount originally released these films when all this first phase came out. You know, from Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Captain America, and Thor, all were put out by Paramount at the time, which I think is really interesting. Then that's when finally Marvel finally got into, you know, a way that they were able to do it themselves by a huge, amazing, basically almost like a grant that they got from Merrill Lynch, actually, that allowed them to be able to start producing these movies and to put them out in their own studio, and that's when really the birth of Marvel Studios happened. So yeah, this movie really is a great catalyst for that, because this was the last film really before we got Avengers, because Thor came out in May, this came out in July, and so we had, this was the catalyst really that really launched Marvel Studios. So that's another big thing I noticed about this, you know, this film. Now, a lot of people are probably wondering who directed this film. Well, I noticed down in the little sidebar here that you're giving is, you know, who directed, and that's of course Joe Johnston. Now, Joe Johnston is known for doing, you know, films such as like Gremlins and so forth, The Birds, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And one thing that I noticed about this film, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but there was a very huge, almost cartoony feel to this film versus the other Marvel films that I've seen, especially when it came to the special effects, when it came to some of the action sequences were just very cartoony, I felt. So next question is, what do you guys feel about the action in this film? Let's start off with you, Arch.
I was trying to think of the scenes as you were talking about it there. So I guess the first thing that stands out to me might be like the montage sequence when they're going through, and it's like the only real war sequence that you get. I'm trying to define it. I'm not sure if I have a word to define it, but I mean, I was really into the whole thing. I mean, you know what? One thing, just in terms of cartoony, if I had to pick a scene, like there's one particular one during that montage where he drops a bomb. He opens a tank lid and drops a bunch of bombs on it. It comes flying off, and he's like running in the air as he comes down. I guess that's probably close to what you're talking about. But I was really into the action the entire time, especially the shootout scene where he's breaking out prisoners for the first time, and they get back, and he's publicly dubbed Captain America at that point. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I've just mentioned those two scenes, so I guess I'll probably stick with those. The other one that might stand out is the final sort of fight with a Red Skull on the plane that they're on. I can't even think of the name of the plane right now, but yeah, I mean, I was really into it. I suppose it's not. I was more into some of the personal moments, like him jumping on a grenade, for instance, or him taking down the flag, like, and a lot of stuff with Peggy, all those things. I was probably more into that than the action in this movie, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, let me rephrase that a little bit too. I'm not saying the action or the cartooniness of it is a bad thing. I felt it was very like comic booky compared to the other films where they were a little bit more serious. So that's basically what I was getting at. What are your thoughts, Jeff?
Well, I would agree with your take of it being comic booky. Let me really quick, Cyber, if you don't mind, let me do some quick share screen, and I'll go ahead and play a clip or two from the film real quick, just so we have something else to kind of refresh us a little bit.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
All right.
Okay, now I got it.
I don't care what time it is. This one's waited long enough.
Sorry, folks. Here we go.
Stamps in 5 different. That might not be the right file. No, it's not the stamps. It's 5 tries. But you didn't answer my question. Do you want to kill Nazis? Is this a test? Yes.
Great scene, great scene.
Blame. You don't like bullets. Okay, with them. There are already so many big men fighting this war. Maybe what we need now is a little bit.
It is a good scene. Okay, one last one, and then we'll jump back.
All right.
Come on. There we go.
All of them not using their brains.
Love the scene.
And Steve just walks up there.
Roger! I said fall in!
Love Peggy's reaction here, by the way.
I just love Peggy in general. Okay. All right, YouTube, do me a favor, please. Do not freaking take down our freaking video just because I played that freaking 30-second clip, okay? I'm telling you right now, don't do it. Anyways, Cyber, back to what we were talking about. And for me, just kind of like based off of like what you said, what Arch said, the film, it's like as far as the action goes, I mean, look, I feel like the action really stepped up and took it to a different level almost in like every Captain America film. Like as they jumped from film to film, like you saw like them demonstrate Captain America's fighting skills and everything and whatnot more and more, like, you know what I mean? And like the action scenes got bigger. And as far as like with the First Avenger, I felt like the only thing that kind of looking like being like a dark horse here, looking at like watching the film and everything today, it's interesting to me like how it makes any sense other than the fact that this is a comic book movie that like Chris Evans is like this scrawny dude and everything and whatnot, right? And he like gets beat up everywhere and everything, but then he gets the super soldier serum, so all of a sudden he can just like run into Hydra bases and stuff and like knock dudes out and everything and whatnot. Like, when did he get that ability? Like, did he just like, I don't understand. It's just interesting to me. Like, he's like knocking dudes out and everything and like manages to like get into an entire Hydra base and everything by himself. And he's like jumping into tanks and everything and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, that's cool. But like, you know, it's just interesting to me, you know, like, again, it's the MCU, it's a comic book universe. So, you know, whatever. But no, like the action's great in the film. For me, my favorite, probably one of my favorite scenes that really like I really love is the scene where he rescues the soldiers and brings them back, and Tommy Lee Jones is like, "What the hell?" And he like walks in with like all of the soldiers and everything, and Bucky, and that's a really great scene. But as far as action goes, just to wrap it up, like I love that scene where he gets into that tank, pulls the tank driver out, and then like jumps off the tank like 60 feet in the air or whatever down to the ground, and like his arms swing around. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of great
scenes. The tanks exploded.
Yeah. There's
a lot of great scenes in this movie. I mean, you know, besides, I just feel like out of all the MCU films, like I'm saying, I love that it was so different than the other MCU films. Like, I think that was a great first outing, and that's why, Marvel went in that direction. And, that's why I was like, okay, what's everyone's take on this? Because everyone can have such a different take on each of these scenes or each of these films. And so it's just interesting to see people, go on and, kind of explain what their take is on it. And I think that's what's great about this film is that there are so many different aspects to this film. And that's what makes it such a great first film. So now that kind of leads me into what next I'd like to talk about. So, after the beginning intro, we get to see, them dig into the ice. Then we go to 1942 over Nazi Germany, and we see, Johann taking the Tesseract. He's trying to find it, taking it so that he can use it for his diabolical plans for Hydra. Now, this first introduction to, Red Skull, basically, what was everyone's thoughts on Hugo Weaving's take on the Red Skull? Go ahead and start off first, Jeff.
Well, basically, I feel like my opinion hasn't changed in terms of how I felt about it when the film came out and I first saw it. I thought that the casting of Hugo Weaving, regardless of the time difference, was a great pick. Like, that was like they hit that out of the park. They hit that out of the ballpark, like with that one. Like, I mean, you couldn't have picked a better actor to play the Red Skull. I mean, right down to his like German accent in the film is like spot on. You know what I mean? Like, it's very authentic. Same thing with Zola. Basically, I feel like the one point I really would want to make, just to like the main component that I felt like Hugo Weaving was able to provide as the Red Skull that maybe another actor wouldn't have been able to potentially, is that he managed to pull off a sense that he respected Captain America. Like, he respected Steve Rogers. You know what I mean? Like, as Captain America. Like, he knew who he was. He knew his background. He knew where he was from and everything. And you could see, like, that there's this, like, respect. That there's, like, this appreciation from him as the Red Skull. And at times during the scenes where, like, there's dialogue between the Red Skull and Captain America, there's, like, this begrudging, admiration or respect. And I think there's almost like a sense where Hugo Weaving as Red Skull really like creates the dynamic with Captain America as like his main villain, basically. You know what I mean? Like, he makes that stand out and makes it work. Like, like he makes it interesting. So overall, I feel like definitely, without question, I love Hugo Weaving. That's all I'll say. Hugo Weaving is the bomb, man. If anybody out there has never seen the Matrix films, you're crazy.
What are your thoughts, Arch?
No, I totally agree. Actually, a couple good points. It was awesome. I was going to say Agent Smith and also Elrond, Lord of the Rings stuff that had just happened after. So Hugo Weaving was all over the place at the time. Great actor, and I agree with you. He brought a lot of intensity to that role. I like what you're just saying there about him respecting Steve. It's like he views him as a legitimate challenge, as like a legitimate challenger. He's almost jealous of him, really, because Steve is like the perfected version or something, and you can almost get that sense that Red Skull at the time knows that he's not the perfected version, but he's still trying to carry out whatever he wants to do.
I don't mean to cut you off, but do you feel like maybe there's almost like a sense of like brotherhood or like almost like not camaraderie, but like a connection that's almost like familial, like for Red Skull towards like Steve because of the super soldier serum?
Yes, but it's more like at the risk of it's almost like somebody came into the family who you feel like doesn't belong, and he wants to kick that guy out. That's almost more what it's like. So, but just that scene in general, awesome scene. Going back to what Cyber said earlier, extremely comic booky, and that you know what I wish I'd have thought about this one when you mentioned comic booky, because that one feels like what you'd flip through the pages if you've ever. I read Captain America for a little while, especially the Bucky takes over his arc after Steve's death. But that feels exactly like what you'd read a first issue, where you're starting off, you're not the main story, but you're seeing some creepy dude who turns out to be the Red Skull, go through some mystical stuff and open up a box and he finds the cosmic cube or something like that. Very comic booky there. I loved it. I loved how he played the guy. He's friendly, he's respectful, but then he just kills the town anyway. Just ruthless dude. That whole scene set up the movie very nicely. I thought it was great.
Yeah, he was a great choice, I thought, too, myself, for that character. And it's too bad that, he didn't come back to even go to the small parts in Endgame and Infinity War. But Hugo Weaving as an actor in general is just, he is an amazing, like talking about, him as Agent Smith in The Matrices, as Elrond in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbits, and then, of course, him in V for Vendetta. I mean, pretty much anything he ever puts his fingers into, as an actor, he's always on point, so amazing. And so the fact that when they found out that they had chose him to play Red Skull, I was like, this is really awesome, and it'd be great to see him down the line, coming back to this character. And that's one thing I noticed about this film is I was really surprised by the end of this film they had him disappear. And, we didn't get to see him again until, Infinity War and Endgame. So I was really shocked that they kind of, took this really big villain of Captain America and kind of made him disappear right away. I was really shocked by that, actually, when I first saw this in theaters back in 2011. And, but yeah, Hugo Weaving in general was just such a great pick. And even the look of him was on point for Red Skull, too. I mean, the mask and everything fit so well. And he just looked like he was Red Skull himself. Now, after he grabs the Tesseract and all that kind of cool stuff, we go on and we get to see more images of Steve before he becomes Captain America. We get to see him trying to try out to get into the army and so forth during World War II. We get his interactions with Bucky and so forth and stuff like that down the line. Now, that brings me to another thing, is what are our thoughts on Sebastian Stan as Bucky? What were your first thoughts when you first saw him in that first scene kind of where Steve is getting beat up in the alleyway and he comes in out of nowhere and stops the guy from beating him up? What were you guys' first thoughts on what did you think of Sebastian Stan? Did you think he was going to stand up to, being Bucky, being that character? What were your thoughts? Let's start off with you, Arch.
Yeah, I love Bucky. He's one of my favorite characters. As I kind of alluded to a minute ago, one of the first comics I've ever read. I haven't read. I didn't read comics my whole life. There was like a 5-year run where I collected something back in around 2000. But when it was right after Steve's death, following Civil War, and Bucky was taking over as Captain America, or at least he was building up to that point. He was very reluctant to do so, to take on that mantle, and he didn't feel like he was worthy. But watching this movie, Sebastian Stan was exactly how I would have envisioned that. He was a very noble guy. This tragedy sort of befell him where he is used and abused by terrible people, and he's kind of got to live with that consequence the rest of his life. But I think Stan has pulled that out throughout the entire series. I think he's a fantastic actor. I'm trying to think of a specific moment in that movie that I would point to, but more recently in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, those moments where they're like the couples counseling scene where they're in, right, where where he looks at him and you really feel the emotion when he looks at Sam and says, why did you give up the shield? If it's if he was wrong about you, then he's wrong about me. You can really feel that from Sebastian Stan as an actor, and I've liked him the entire time as well. I think it's a great arc the entire way throughout the entire series.
Yeah, that hands down is probably one of my favorite scenes of the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. That was absolutely on point. And a cool thing about that scene is it was 100% all improv. There was actually the director. He went to Anthony Mackie and to Sebastian Stan and said, "Okay, so we have this scene coming up where you guys are going to be in therapy. Want you guys just to go at it. There's no really any script or anything that how we want you to do it. We just want to see you guys be as authentic as possible." And the scene that ended up was all 100% improv. It was amazing. I can't believe that was all improv when I first saw it, and it was so perfect for both Sebastian Stan's character and Anthony Mackie's character. So when you brought up that scene, yeah, that's like one of my all-time favorite scenes of that whole show. It was just so good.
I hadn't heard that, but that's amazing.
Well,
yeah,
it makes sense to me that they would let them just ad lib something like that. To be completely honest with you, because those guys know their characters. They've been they've been playing those characters for years and everything and whatnot. So I mean, I think that's like I think that's very interesting and like very like cool that they gave the actors the opportunity like that to actually just act and like, you know, create on their own and whatnot. I also very much like think that the point that Arch made was very poignant in terms of in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the emotion, like, and the depth and like the gravity of Bucky and like his expressions and like his voice and everything and whatnot. Like when he says to Sam, like, why'd you give up the shield, Sam? You know, like, I mean, he's like pissed and like let down and disappointed and like, you know, almost like, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting part for me that I'll never forget of watching the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where like, it's really critical. I think that like Arch said that you take into consideration that literally, Bucky, like he said, you know, what did he say, Arch? Like if you whatever with the shield, you're
he was leading into it. And he ended up saying he was talking about how Sam wasn't accepted, and he said if you don't accept this shield, then you're essentially saying he was wrong about you, and if he's wrong about you, then he's wrong about me.
Yeah.
And he needs this to feel like he's redeemed.
Yes.
He needs Sam to validate what Steve's faith in him as much as anything.
And that connection, we've talked about this before amongst Cyber and Perry and I before our other shows. We've talked about the fact that essentially for Captain America later on in the MCU, essentially for Bucky, once Steve goes back in time and then comes back and retires essentially or whatever, Sam and that shield become the closest thing to family that like Bucky has. You know what I mean? Like literally, he's a man out of time, and like, you know, Sam is like that connection. You know, even if like, you know, they were just Steve's buddies, like they were Steve's friends, like who were working together or whatever.
Right.
Basically, just to like not wrap up my point, but wrap up this part of my point. Essentially, I love how things ended up working out at the end of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in terms of where their relationship together got to. Like, that was great. I love the positivity of that. That was really great. Even if I was a little critical of some aspects of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier as a whole. As far as Bucky goes in the First Avenger, I mean, honestly, I feel like, hey, it was the first time he was playing the role. They didn't give him a ton to work with in that film, really. You know what I mean? Like, they really kind of like almost muted him a little bit in terms of, you know, like his character and whatnot. I felt like Sebastian Stan did a great job with what he had to work with. You know, but like, again, he doesn't get that much screen time really in the film. And, you know, like, you know, again, like March said, Sebastian Stan's, you know, playing of that character has just been great no matter what, and like evolved.
There's another little key scene that I wanted to mention, which and I don't want to get too far off on Falcon and Winter Soldier, but as it relates to Bucky, they're on the plane, and Sam reiterates to him that he doesn't want to have the shield. And Bucky's, I'm not sure if I'm going to get the exact quote right here, but Bucky said, "Well, if you're not going to take it, and John Walker is definitely not going to have it, then I'll take it." So he doesn't want to wear that crown, but he needs it to have validation for himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Most definitely. Yeah. So I mean, Bucky in general, I think Sebastian Stan's been doing a great job for the last 10 years playing this character. I mean, he improved on it within the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, just where his character has gone and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to, you know, first seeing him in the, you know, first Captain America, I remember thinking, hey, this guy's gonna be good. I think he's gonna be a great addition to this, you know, to this series and to the Marvel universe. because I automatically, connected with Sebastian Stan's character of Bucky and just how he was, because I just thought that he did such a great job of really conveying from the comic book pages who Bucky Barnes is, and just did such a great job. Now, as we go further on into the movie, now, after that, we get, of course, we get introduced to Peggy Carter. We get introduced into Arnim Zola. We get introduced to Dr. Abraham Erskine, all played by great actors, Hayley Atwell, Toby Jones, and, of course, Stanley Tucci. And the first interaction with, Abraham, I think is such a great scene, which we watched earlier that you shared, Jeff. That whole scene was just, you could see that Abraham could see that this person, there's a lot more to him, even though he's so small, or he's not as, normal looking as some other of the soldiers are. So when he first popped up, Stanley Tucci, I couldn't believe it that he was this character. I was like ecstatic because I absolutely love Stanley Tucci. I think he's one of the best character actors ever around. And so when he was playing this character, I absolutely thought that it was just such a great attempt at bringing this character to life onto the big screen. So my question is for you guys is, what did you think of Stanley Tucci's performance as this character? Do you think he brought enough to the table? Do you think that he, even though it was such a small part, and we really don't get to know much more about him, what are your thoughts on him? Let's go ahead and start off with you, Jeff.
Well, I mean, I feel like I love Stanley Tucci. I do. I mean, as a character actor, I think that he's probably maybe, I don't know if he's really overrated at this point, but like he kind of is, because I mean, he really is a great character actor. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to get into like, overall film and everything right now, but in general, he's been pulling off stand-up performances left and right, like for like literally what? I mean, 3 decades, like, I mean, plus or something. Like, he's a great actor. I think that like what he did with the role in the film was excellent. It fit perfectly into the film. The timing of it and everything was great. He made a great impact for a character that dies, like 40 minutes into the film, like, I mean, he made a real impact. And I think that, basically Peggy is an interesting character for me in the film because, I love Hayley Atwell, and I love what she did with Peggy Carter. I really do. And for me, they didn't give Peggy Carter a ton of screen time in the film, but what they did give her, she really made it work. Like she stood out in her scenes and whatnot to me. She's not like the most beautiful woman in the world, I think, but she's like very like classic looking, and she fits in like that time period with World War II and everything and whatnot, like to the T, in terms of her haircut and everything, and like, what she wears and whatnot and everything. It's a great role. Like I love her as Peggy Carter. And, basically for me, I feel like the whole Howling Commandos, like with all those supporting actors, were just great too in the film, like hands off, like they were great.
Nice. How about you, Arch? What do you think?
Yeah, Tucci was fantastic. Every scene of him was great. The one that came to mind when you started talking about him was the scene where they're preparing. It's like the night before Steve's experiment, right? And that's where he gives his, you just, no matter what happens, stay what you are, a good man. And that's a very key scene. And the way Tucci delivers it is amazing. But the reason I was thinking about the scene is he also balances it with just this real world levity. And I'll take a minute to tree stump a speech about what I think about Marvel humor. Is I think it is always very natural, pretty much always very natural. Yeah, in the sense that this is how people really talk. And he follows that line up with, they're going to share a glass of whatever they're drinking. It's vodka or something, I can't remember. And Steve's about to drink it, and he takes it away from him. And he's like, no, you can't drink it. Drinks it himself. Just like that kind of like very naturalistic humor. I think Tucci balances that entire scene great. But every other scene he's in, from just looks he gives to Tommy Lee Jones when Steve jumps on the grenade, or the dummy grenade, just everything. Every little scene he's in, I think he does a great job of emoting and presenting like a really just well-rounded character that gets you into that emotion. He reminds me of Yinsen from the Iron Man series. He's that sort of like fatherly figure, like Yinsen was to Tony Stark. Tucci here is to Steve here, and I think he plays it very well.
Yeah. Most definitely.
I
totally. Yeah, totally agree with all that. What you guys said, especially about Hayley Atwell. You know, she's a very gorgeous woman. I think she was a great selection for playing Agent Carter. I think that most definitely would have been nice to see her have a little bit bigger of a role in the film, especially with how big they made the relationship between her and Captain. Because you really, even though you don't really see much of that in the film, they make sure that's a big pivotal point in the film too, especially with the end scene where, you know, Steve's about to crash into the ice and he's talking about not being able to make that date, and she's crying, and you're like, you know, it seems like they barely knew each other, you know what I mean? So there wasn't a huge connection of showing that romance budding. So it would have been nice to have seen her a little bit more in that film to kind of connect those dots a little better. But in a whole, she still did a really great job. And when it comes to, I think Toby Jones does an amazing job as Zola. I absolutely loved him as a character, especially when they brought him back as computer voice in Captain America and the Winter Soldier. He just was like, he was perfect, because even his accent, very similar to Hugo Weaving's, was really, really good. But Jeff, you supposedly have some other clips that you would like to share. How about you go ahead and share those now?
I do, and I just want to make one just real quick point. Toby Jones is another great character actor, and like really they did a great job of like casting this film and filling these like supporting role slots very well. Like looking back at it now, I didn't think about it back then, but like now I definitely like see it. But most definitely, give me 1 second and I will share screen, which is not exactly the coolest way to do this, folks, but like, hey, you got to work with what you got. Oh, come on. Okay, here we go. There we go.
Whatever happens tomorrow was promised me last night. But you will stay who you are. Not my purpose. We will get. No, wait, behind. Oh, yeah.
Okay. 1 second.
I love that part.
All right.
Has been managed after all. But it's actually an improvement.
You got no idea.
Damn.
Love
it's
it.
a Red Skull.
Okay, let's see.
Like Sebastian Stan's face there. Look at it. It's like perfection. Like
He's Bucky, man. They did a great job with him.
Okay, here we go. Oh, come on. Sorry, guys. I don't like this share screening stuff at all. There's my favorite scene.
oh.
Okay, one more. I had to pull that one up because I love that scene. It's my favorite scene, I think.
I gotta tell you, that one when they're coming back in, that's for me at least, that's a pretty emotional moment in the movie, and I think it's supposed to be. But like, really, you feel that when he's coming back, and he's bringing all these people. There's something about having saved all these lives that just you feel it. It's really impactful.
It's a paradigm shift in the film, almost, isn't it,
Mhm.
Arch? Like,
very
like
much.
like a shift.
That's the moment where he becomes legit. Because up until then, he's been, the circus monkey. That's the image that he's even drawing in his book with Captain America on it. But at that point, he becomes the serious Captain America, and it's a fantastic moment. It really is.
All right, last clip.
You're also
Last
very
clip,
much
Cyber.
rooting.
Last clip.
You're rooting very much at that scene too because he came back with everybody too. So that you're like,
Oh, yeah.
he did it. He did it.
Okay. Let me apologize. Everybody who ends up checking out this video on YouTube, I'm sorry for the screen sharing. I'm trying to figure out how this restream works as far as like a streaming platform goes. And, basically, in the long run, I'll find a more like logical and presentable way of showing you guys the clips of these films. But you got to work with me a little bit with the screen sharing right now. Sorry, guys.
I'll share some tips later for you.
Hey, I figured out how to actually upload clips of videos onto the restream effectively, like I did with the trailer. But I didn't find it until like right before the show. So, I didn't know last time we did this on Restream. And I'm kind of like I'm working with this as we go here. And so next time we do a review on here, I'll actually have clips like uploaded and everything and whatnot that I can just drop easily, Most definitely.
Right on, brother.
Captain Marvel, folks. Captain Marvel. Arch, I haven't even told you yet. We're going to try to pull off a Saturday morning Captain Marvel review.
That sounds fun.
But early in the morning, though, so I don't know. Like you might be too busy. Like the wife might not let you do it. I don't know, man. Like we're planning on doing 8:30.
I'll tell you right now. I'm gonna be in Denton, so I probably can't make that one. But we can talk about that later.
Okay, brother. Okay. All right. Cyber.
Anyways, back on track, people.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back to the review.
Anyways, so as we just showed, he just showed those clips. A few of them were ones that we were talking about already, and all that kind of good stuff. And as we got to see a little bit of Zola, we got to see a little bit of Red Skull fighting between Captain America, all that kind of good stuff. Those are really great scenes. Like we were talking about, saying that one scene is very pivotal moment in the film, kind of transitioning from Steve fully becoming really Captain America, that feeling of joy and all that kind of stuff and so forth. And and it's just a really fun kind of just concept too as well. And those are just really great scenes that Jeff shared with us. But as we move on throughout the film, we get to see Tony Stark's dad. We get to see, kind of the Stark tech back during the 40s, like what were they working on and so forth. And that was a kind of a cool little thing I thought that they threw into the movie. Because from my understanding, I mean, you said that you've read the comic books a lot, or the Captain America series, let's say. I don't know how often, Tony Stark's dad was in the comics. I don't know if he was very prominent in them or not, because I really haven't had a chance to read them myself. But I just thought that was a really cool concept that they put into the movie. I was wondering what your guys' thoughts were on that. How about you go with that, Arch?
Oh yeah, Arch would probably be the more knowledgeable guy on this one than me, to be honest with you.
You're building my knowledge up too much. So I have not read a book with Howard Stark in it, but it completely makes sense. So I love it, and I think honestly, as a whole, that's one of the things the MCU does best is blending and merging stories throughout their history. So a couple that stand to mind are like Ego, as they do him as the Living Planet, is also presented as the Gardener, who's one of the elders of the universe. I won't get into the details of that right now, but the Tesseract is presented as the Cosmic Cube, which is, in the films is also an Infinity Stone, which isn't the case in the comics. But I think all those things are great blendings of ideas in a film series where you're not going to have unlimited resources and unlimited issues to be able to just print and make every single version of everything. So I think they do a great job blending these things. I'm a huge fan of MCU lore. Anytime they get into anything in the past, whether it's Howard Stark or Peggy Carter, the past with Steve Rogers, Hank Pym, they've done some small flashbacks with him and the Wasp. Any of those I think is great. So I love seeing them meet. I love the fact that plays into a lot of future events, how Tony and Steve get along. Like Tony knows that Steve was Howard's best friend, so it adds some spice to their dynamic. I think all of that's fantastic, and I love both actors that they've used for Howard Stark. By the way, the young one, I can't remember his name right now, and the older one. I think it's really cool to watch that play out.
What are your thoughts on it, Jeff? How do you feel about Howard Stark being in this film?
Well, I agree with Arch on two fronts right off the jump. The fact that I never ever saw Howard Stark in a Captain America comic book either. I never did. I think that was more of a thing that they added to the MCU, if anything. And in terms of what Arch said about the casting of Tony's dad, like Howard Stark, they did do an awesome job with both actors, like the older, Howard and like the younger Howard. I love is it Dominic Cooper?
I
think you got it right.
So.
Yeah, he's great.
So.
He's great. He's a very good actor. I like him. I think that he did a great job with the younger Howard Stark. And basically I feel like essentially it's interesting to me that they were able to make that connection and make him such an integral part of the MCU backstory of Steve Rogers and everything and whatnot. Like, and I personally always loved like Tony telling Steve later on in the films that like Howard would always talk about Steve and talk about Captain America and everything to him when he was a kid and everything and whatnot. Like that really adds to the whole dynamic between Tony and Steve throughout the MCU, their relationship. And I just think that although this is the first Avenger and the first Captain America film, I feel like it's important to bring attention to that dynamic, that connection between those two characters, because and the actors themselves, because I mean, let's be honest here, like the majority of folks out there throughout the run of the Infinity Saga were basically kind of like either Steve was their favorite or like Tony was their favorite, kind of, you know what I mean? And I felt like for me, I feel like the dynamic and the relationship between Steve and Tony throughout the films was just such an interesting and consistent dynamic that we got to watch unfold, that it was just really fun to like, watch and like really interesting, and like, and powerful, especially how Civil War ended. You know what I mean? Like, and then how Endgame was like, with Tony coming back from, Titan and like falling down and everything and whatnot, and like, flipping out on Steve. But I'll go back to you, Cyber. I just wanted to bring that up so that maybe like you and Arch might have an opinion kind of on that whole connection with Tony and Steve.
I honestly, I mean, like I was saying before, I think it was just a really cool concept that they included into the, movie itself. The fact that, they really, in the comic book, they really haven't done that. It was a great, move by Marvel itself to change that up and to move with that. And to kind of, I feel that kind of helps solidify, like you were saying, Steve and Tony's relationship when we eventually see them together, in Avengers. And throughout the other films that were in, Civil War and so forth. And just kind of how you can see Steve trying to understand the differences between Tony and Howard, how they were so different in their thinking, but still very genius-like. And you could see that throughout, as, time moved on and, them not working together very well, how that relationship had evolved. I think that was a really interesting concept they decided to go with. And like Arch was saying, with them adding different things in to kind of spice things up for the MCU that weren't in the comic books, that's just MCU's way of trying to make it even more enticing and more entertaining and splicing them and making them interconnecting stories which really make it fun. So that brings me to the fact about the Tesseract itself. Now, this is the first film we get to see the Tesseract in. And the fact that the Tesseract has been in so many different places over the years, I think it's kind of a funny thing, like, because at one point, in Endgame, the Tesseract was, being hidden by the good guys, in the 70s. And then we have the Tesseract was on Asgard at one point. We have the Tesseract now here in Germany in the 1940s. I mean, the Tesseract has been everywhere. I don't know how that correlates to the comic book itself. If that was, Archer was mentioning that, they called it a cube of some sort, a powder cube at one point, and so forth. And it wasn't really always considered an Infinity Stone like they end up doing with it in the films. So my question is, what are your thoughts of them bringing the Tesseract into this first Captain America movie? And do you think it was a pivotal addition to the film so that it could carry out through the Infinity Saga? Why don't you start us off, Jeff?
Well, I think that's very impactful and like a really good point to bring up, Cyber. I do. Like, I really think that as far as the comics go, honestly, essentially, Captain America was created by cartoonists Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. He first appeared in Captain America Comics #1 in March 1941 from Timely Comics, which then became Marvel Comics. And essentially, Captain America was the most popular character for Timely Comics throughout the actual period of World War II in terms of sales. He disappeared for a while. They canceled the comic. And then from 1964 to today, Captain America has remained in publication, which is awesome for me. Like, it's awesome. I honestly, he's a longtime leader of the Avengers. And again, I mean, Chris Evans, for me, is like almost like my hero in a way, like, because Captain America is my favorite superhero. So, like, he played my favorite superhero, and he did a freaking bang-up job doing it. And as far as, like, the Cube goes and, like, the Tesseract, I think that, like, when I think of their inserting of that into, like, the First Avenger film, I feel like it just makes me think of the game planning and the concept, thinking and everything that Kevin Feige and the rest of his team did to put all this together, especially when they were, taking out a loan, to produce films after the whole Paramount deal. You know what I mean? Like, they literally borrowed money. And, like, it was one of those situations where, like, if they had failed, who knows what could have happened financially for them. So, I mean, they really, you know, at that point when this movie came out, Kevin Feige was like a known commodity, but like he wasn't Kevin Feige that we know of today. So like, and like all of his lieutenants and everything and whatnot that all make up his like inner circle, you know, they were there from the beginning essentially. You know what I mean? And so at that point, it's just very interesting to me to look back at the reality that they were putting the Tesseract in Captain America, the First Avenger, to then tie that directly into the Infinity Saga and then Infinity War and Endgame and everything and whatnot. It's just fun to watch, like, and remember how they put all this together and everything, because they just did such a great job.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. What are your thoughts, Arch? What about the cube itself being a part of the first Captain America itself?
You know, I got a number of different thoughts on this, just listening to you guys talk. But first, I guess it makes sense to me. It's the Space Stone. You could travel around with it. So it makes sense that it's the one that's been bounced around the most. It's the one that's sort of like the most well-known, whereas other ones like the Power Stone have just been hidden on Morag for 500 years or however long. So I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I like the conception of a Captain America character dealing with something on this cosmic level scale because of the contrast between it. So just in modern society, and especially in the MCU levels modern society, which is, you know, even a little bit more advanced than our modern society, but the contrast of like a 1940s man dealing with that and a space stone is even more so than it would be for us. So I like that there's this heavy contrast about this man at a time dealing with this stuff that's even beyond our imagination. I think that's great. Just to clarify a little bit for those who may not be as familiar with the comics, and I just want to preface this by saying I am not the leading comics authority, so there's going to be people that know way more than what I'm about to tell you. But when I mentioned the Cosmic Cube earlier, that's in the comics traditionally a completely separate thing than the Infinity Stones. They've sort of merged those ideas in the movies, which is fine. I love those merger ideas. But the Space Stone itself, or the Cosmic Cube, is just a different kind of cosmic, you know, power box. I actually don't know the limits completely of it, but it's not as powerful as the Space Stone would be. But those are traditionally different things. But I love that they've combined them. The just the use of it here, Captain America in a number of the comics I've read, the most recent ones, there was one, and I'll tie this back to something you mentioned earlier about the Red Skull disappearing. When I first saw that, I was actually excited because there was a comic I read one time where the Red Skull's spirit, entity, essence, whatever you want to call it, had incorporated itself into the body of a man who was running for president. And so you had this person running for president of the United States who nobody knew was the Red Skull. And so you had characters like Bucky and Sam trying to go after a presidential candidate who nobody knew was the most evil person ever. It was a really cool kind of thing. So that was the kind of story I was thinking about when you see Red Skull just disappear. I'm like, when's he coming back? Like, and I loved it when he showed up in Infinity War, by the way. But yeah, I guess those are my quick thoughts on how that ties in. It just leads me to think that there's a bigger, larger story coming, and it got me excited in everything else that we're gonna do.
Yeah. Very much so, yeah. I mean, yeah, even going back to what I was saying, you know, like, I was shocked that, like, all of a sudden, you know, this big baddie was gone already. But still, like, at the same time, I'm thinking, is he going to come back? When are we going to see him again? All that kind of stuff, like you were saying. Yes, most definitely. And at the same time, I'm, like, thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I hope this is not the last time we get to see him, you know?
Cyber,
let
me ask you, Cyber, what do you think? Do you think that they planned on bringing him back for Infinity War for that cameo? Do you think that was in the cards the entire time, or they just came up with that like at that point?
Well, it's Marvel Studios, so they probably had this in the fray. They basically, they're like they said there's been a few interviews I've seen with Feige and even just other people that are involved with the Marvel Studios. They've said that they have basically always 10 years ahead of where they're at. So, I mean, this was something that was already in place back when Iron Man 1 was first being released. So they probably had in their mind that they were going to pop up, Red Skull again back, whenever. But they probably didn't know exactly which film they were going to do it in, but they knew that they were eventually do that again, most definitely. But you were mentioning earlier that you had some Rotten Tomato reviews that you'd like to talk about.
Thank you, Cyber. I think this would actually be kind of fun, a different kind of like angle to the show, and kind of change things up a little bit to wrap things up kind of before we finish things up. I've got some of the reviews from Rotten Tomatoes. I just want to go ahead and read a couple of them, and I think it would be fun just to kind of see where you guys are at, with your opinions contrasting, or just kind of your take on these reviews. So okay, basically we've got David Hogan from Hogan's Reviews. The 40s setting is well realized. The characters are all really well developed and genuinely fun to watch. And the action scenes are well shot and exciting. And we've got Rachel Wagner. I love the 1940s touches throughout, and the action is really enjoyable. Mike Massey, Gone with the Twins. Like a drastically more unbelievable Indiana Jones, Captain America combats Nazi villains and stumbles into chases utilizing military vehicles. This is a negative one. However, it's just another mindless and soulless action movie with all the visual and emotional appeal of a wet cardboard box. That's from Mike Massey. Contrasting his initial positive reaction to the film. And
cardboard box.
Yes, that's actually kind of comical. I don't agree, but while Steve Rogers, the man in isolation, is a beacon of goodness, Captain America, the symbol within a larger narrative context, falls victim to Marvel's penchant for diluted ideology. And that's it. I cannot. My laptop is freezing, and it will not let me say who that review is. But I just want to point out, as I've mentioned in the graphics, that overall from Rotten Tomatoes, this movie got a 80% from Rotten Tomatoes, and it got a 74% from the audience. So you tell me, Cyber, what do you think about those reviews, man?
With any movie, you're always going to have very opposite opinions and reviews from different people. Some movies have better reviews than others. Some have worse reviews than others. This film, I'm not shocked by those comments at all. Because I do recall when it first came out in 2011, I remember there was a lot of critics that said, oh, it's a great film, but we feel it lacks in certain areas. And then there was other people that said, oh, this is the greatest, Marvel film since, Iron Man, et cetera, and stuff like that. But that cardboard reference was just absolutely hilarious. I mean, if you're comparing it to a cardboard box, this movie, you might want to just go put yourself in a loony bin or something. I don't know. Because apparently you weren't watching the film for what it is. I mean, going back to my reference about the cartooniness, that's why I was mentioning the cartooniness earlier, is because I remember a lot of time when that first came out, a lot of people were saying they felt it was very comic booky or cartoony feeling. And that's why a lot of people are saying that it wasn't as good as they thought it was going to be, because of that kind of very soft edges look to it. It wasn't as dark as Iron Man was. And but just any review, I always look at it with a grain of salt, and I always laugh at the majority of them, because I'm just I didn't watch the same movie. I'm sorry, I just don't agree with the review. And I look at this as a movie for what it is. It's entertainment value. It's a comic book. It's not real. It's not supposed to be a documentary. It's not supposed to be an Oscar-winning film. It is what it is. And so those reviews, the good ones are just as funny as the bad ones, I feel. And I mean, a lot of people, I feel, got the gist of what this film was supposed to be, and it was a great first outing for Chris Evans as, Captain America. I just think reviews are funny and so subjective, and I just always enjoy reading some of them sometimes, and other times I'm just like, I could care less.
I've got some audience reviews, Cyber. Before Arch comes on, I've got some audience reviews that I think you guys might want to hear that might be interesting. Just real quick. One of Marvel's worst, Captain America: The First Avenger, falls short on almost all platforms. Its poorly treated storyline is executed in a horrible fashion. This is from July 2016. And this is another one, 3.5-4. Not bad, not outstanding, mildly enjoyable, mostly forgettable. I don't know, Arch, what do you think?
I'm just gonna tell you. I got two thoughts. One, I generally respect Rotten Tomatoes for the most part. That's not always a popular opinion, but I think they're mostly close when you look at the vast majority of movies. You could probably find one that you rabidly disagree with, but I think they're within 5 or 10 points one way or the other. They're not that far off usually. So I think they're pretty good. I think it's a fairly reliable site. Fan reviews, I don't care about. I do not care. I don't care. Most of because they're hot and cold, right? Like you just got people that just want to overlove something or want to overhate it, and I just don't care. I really don't. I like talking with guys like you who can sit around and just enjoy it and have a good time with it and talk about it realistically. I think that's fun. So, I think this is a solid film. I think throughout phase one, their goal really was to probably be a little bit safe, not as experimental, just to make sure they got the pieces in place, set the board up, and pull off Avengers. And then they could be free to go around and Doctor Strange and Guardians of the Galaxy to play face off. They just get crazy after that. But this was a phase very much about just, doing it right, getting pieces set up the right way. The way we've talked about it, they got characters right, they got you invested in it, they got the mood right, they got the atmosphere right. Iron Man's a more sort of semi-realistic, but advanced take on, what a guy could do with tech. But this is a little bit more fantasy, blended with, realism on a World War II vet and how he would react to more fantastical elements. And then you've got Thor, which is just sci-fi fantasy, which is great. So I think they hit their mark on all of these, and Captain America: The First Avenger is a wonderful example of a great comic book and enjoyable film.
Most definitely.
Very nice. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's subjective. We're all subjective. Depends on, like you were saying, you agree with the rotten, critics. They're pretty accurate and stuff like that, which once again, it's just an opinion. And, I always look at those reviews. Sometimes they're pretty critical of certain films that I just don't get why they're so evil against them sometimes. But at the same time, yeah, like I said, it's all an opinion. And like I said, you take it with a grain of salt. You either like it or you don't like it. That's what makes us individuals and makes us, fun, and talking about these films and so forth. So
you bring up a good point. Oh, sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying, if you're reading reviews too, you have to kind of think about where this person's coming from. Like if you ask me to go review something like Pride and Prejudice, right? This isn't my film. It's not going to be something I'm apt or eager to get and review in a way that's enjoyable. You want to talk to somebody that enjoys that genre of film, and you're going to discuss things with people who enjoy that kind of film. Some of these reviews, like a couple of the negative ones, just sound like people who don't really care about the genre, which is fine. I'm just not apt to really care much about their review. You know what I mean? Because I'm more inclined to listen to guys like yourself who do enjoy this and want to get out of it what it's supposed to be about.
Well, Arch, that makes me think, if you don't mind, if I jump in real quick, Cyber, that makes me think about the reality or the whole premise where, for me, I feel like if you don't understand or align or get what we get out of like the MCU, like out of these movies, out of the Infinity Saga and everything and whatnot, if you don't get like the same, thrill and excitement that we get when we see things like the Infinity War trailers and stuff like that, like when they came out and everything, and like, I mean, they were like life altering for me. You know what I mean? Like, when they showed like Thanos like jump towards Captain America and like Captain America hold up Thanos's arm and everything and whatnot, I was like, oh my God. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, seriously? Like Captain America fighting Thanos one-on-one? Like, that's awesome. And like, look, there is a whole reality where like there's fan service and there's a bias here where we all love like Marvel and we all love the MCU and the comics and stuff. But like, honestly, for me, I feel like from a character standpoint with people, if they like poo-poo like this movie or like the Marvel movies or the whole MCU or whatever, and they're like all negative about it and doom and gloom about it, to me, that's a major sign that like they're like not a very good person. Like if they can't enjoy the flat out like dichotomy of good versus evil, you know what I mean? And like good winning out over evil that like the MCU displays across the Infinity Saga from film to film. Like if that's appalling to them and they don't like that and they find that boring, like, well, I'm sorry, but like if you watch Infinity War in the theater and you watch Endgame in the theater and your reaction to that is that it's boring, then like you're a douchebag.
I think too, just in general, the question I always ask is, did the film accomplish what it was trying to accomplish? Because that's really all that matters. If you're not watching it, I mean, there are films out there. I'm not going to name one, but there are films out there you can watch them, and you can tell it's a bit of a mess. Like that they had some sort of trouble constructing something about it, and it scenes just kind of jump around.
Justice League.
Right, and it doesn't make sense, or things don't add up, or there's big gaping holes, and it's, something doesn't work or something, or there's a major acting issue or something like that. But as long as you're watching a film and you're into it and you can get it, and it seems really well constructed, and they hit the notes they wanted to hit, then I mean, what else are you asking for? I mean, that's all that really matters, right?
Yeah, exactly. So to basically kind of round out the live stream tonight, we're going to take about a couple minutes just for each of us to just give a rounded synopsis or symposium of what you feel about the entire film, and just kind of your thoughts a little bit on the film and just how you feel, basically how the film made you feel and kind of just like the message it gave you. So go ahead and Jeff, why don't you go ahead and give us yours?
Well, before I do my personal take, I just want to mention that this is the first episode, the first part of, as I have laid out on like the graphic on the bottom of the screen, a series of reviews of the entire Infinity Saga that we are trying to connect with the MCU's Bleeding Edge and Arch and his good friend Grandmaster's Podcast of Champions. And I'm really like super excited and feel very blessed to have Arch with us tonight and everything and whatnot. It's been great having like a different set of opinions on here and everything and whatnot. And at the same time, I'm really looking forward to seeing what we end up unpacking overall when this thing is finally done, because we got a lot of films to do down the road. And as far as Captain America goes, I'll make it very quick and simple. I don't even need multiple minutes. I don't agree with the reviews at all. I don't see look, you can only depict World War II in a certain way when you're like making a Marvel film, like a superhero film or whatever. You can't exactly do like Saving Private Ryan type crap like in Captain America, the First Avenger, so you kind of have to like comic booky up a little bit and like kind of lighten things up a little bit and whatnot, but basically for me, again, I think that the ensemble of actors that play the characters of the film is just outstanding. Honestly, Tommy Lee Jones, I mean, is like the man as far as I'm concerned. Like, he's a great actor. his role in that film is kind of small, but it's very powerful. That's a great ensemble cast. Hugo Weaving is honestly, to tell you the truth, when he was more active, he was always very selective in what he'd do. Arch mentioned Elrond. He was awesome as Elrond in Lord of the Rings. Like, he was just like straight dope as Elrond. And like pulled it off like masterfully. And I'll tell you right now, if you guys ever want to get together and do a like way down the road Lord of the Rings review like series, I'm down for that too. But because I'm a huge Tolkien fan. But essentially,
this
Chris
is Marvel,
Evans,
Jeff. This is Marvel.
I know. Chris Evans, man, is like a beast. And like straight up, I love Peggy Carter. I love like the relationship between Peggy and Cap, even if they don't really give it that much screen time and everything during the movie. When they do like show them together, it's great chemistry. Like, it's cute, it's fun, it's like positive. I love it. And like, hey, I mean, overall for me, I feel like you got to take into consideration again, this was like phase 1. They were establishing character development and like trying to like inform people as to what they were going to be dealing with going into the Avengers. And so kind of like what you said and what Cyber you said too, I think that like Marvel Studios like learned and grew from phase to phase and like really like, did a great job evolving their production values and like their storytelling and everything across the years that these films came out. And like where they went from the First Avenger to Captain America, the Winter Soldier, what a stark contrast. You know what I mean? In films, like, like what a different tone, and like, as far as like the villains go, you got Hugo Weaving playing Red Skull and like did a great, awesome job, and then you get freaking like literally like Sebastian Stan as the Winter Soldier, where I think that literally he's probably more effective than he is as Bucky in the MCU, to be honest with you. He's more impactful, because for me, and this is the last thing I'll say, I think that literally, this is totally not even First Avenger. I think that like Bucky as the Winter Soldier in the second Captain America film, he was literally top 3 MCU villains all time.
Okay. Your thoughts, Arch?
Yeah, well, like I'll just follow up on how I started this. When I was watching these back during phase 1 when it first came out, my take was can they establish this character in a way people care about him and fits in a larger picture, and he's relevant and he's cool, and they did that. So that is 100% all they needed to do with this. And that, to me, like a ton of these characters are great. I didn't expect to come out of this film loving Peggy Carter. I didn't, and I do, and she's amazing. The way Hayley Atwell portrays her, everything. I didn't think all of the side characters would be so great. I didn't know how they would nail or be able to pull off Red Skull, and he's an incredible villain. I loved seeing him come back. I thought he was great in this. So it's wonderful that the World War II setting is fun, even looking back on it, and not having the I care about whether or not they can pull this off perspective, knowing they did pull it off. Even going back on it's just a fun, relaxing film. I love the settings. I love the characters. I love seeing Steve just be Steve. There's a thing about Captain America where the guy's superpower is that he just always does the right thing, no matter what. Just always does the right thing under any circumstance, whether it's going to cost him his life, whatever the circumstances, he'll do it. And I love seeing that nobility out of him, whether it's jumping on a grenade or standing up to his superiors to rescue these men, showing his smarts and developing a plan to go after and ultimately take down Red Skull, sacrificing himself at the end. Just all of that is exactly Steve Rogers. And one other small point going into the film that almost nobody talks about anymore, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be on board with Chris Evans when I first watched this film. And mostly that was because he'd just been the Human Torch back in the Fantastic Four film.
Wait a minute, Arch, be careful. Cyber loves the original Fantastic Four films.
I do. I have no problem with Fantastic Four. I actually love it. I will defend that film. The first one, it wouldn't hold up as like one of the greatest comic book films from like right now if you had to evaluate it. But especially back then, that was a solid effort in a Fantastic Four film. I thought it was pretty solid, and I enjoyed Chris Evans in that role. But I couldn't, going into this film, conceptualize how they were going to get the jerk that is Johnny Storm to be the heroic guy that is Steve Rogers. But they did it. He was amazing, and it was after this film that I was like, "Yep, Chris's cap." It was great.
So glad you brought that up, Arch. I really am. I'm glad you made that connection because I was thinking about that when I was watching the movie today. I was like, "This guy was the Human Torch," and like,
right.
I mean, you know, it's amazing.
Right. It really, a totally different character. Like he acts the same. I shouldn't say he acts the same. He speaks the same. It's very obviously Chris Evans. He doesn't like. He's not unrecognizable or anything, but completely different character, and he pulls them both off fantastically.
Most definitely. I mean, he was a lot more cocky. He was a lot more different as Johnny Storm, and that, you know, the contrast between him and how Steve was amazing. I thought Chris Evans really showed that he does have some pretty decent acting chops to really pull that off, especially, you know, being already cast as Johnny Storm in those first two Fantastic Four films. But just in general, for me, my synopsis of this whole film is it was a great whole story, I thought, that really gave a really decent origin story to Captain America, the First Avenger. It could have developed a little better on certain aspects, like I said before, about the relationship between him and Peggy, but I still thought they did a great job of just bringing that together, showing him turning into, you know, Captain America, basically going and becoming really Captain America, you know, showing that he has what it takes to be this person, and kind of just, you know, his transformation from taking on the Red Skull one time, beating him, basically, and then getting trapped in ice for 70 years, and then coming back to really, you know, being the Avengers. And it just was a really nice kind of like beginning point for Chris Evans to really distance himself from Johnny Storm's character and bringing Captain America to life. And it just was a really well and, you know, I thought rounded film that I just really enjoyed. Hands down, it was a decent film. I definitely would agree with the 8% Rotten Tomato fresh score, most definitely, on that film, because it just was really a decent film in the MCU.
Me too. Same thing. I'm ditto with that. I think the 80% is very fair.
Yeah. So, all right, folks. Well, that is where we'll take it to, folks, tonight for this live stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys got some information maybe you hadn't heard before, or maybe just had fun listening to us guys just talk about what we thought about things, and just how amazing this film was to us, and just how we thought it was a really great addition to the MCU. Like we said, we want to thank Arch for coming on tonight and being a part of our live stream. Like we were saying before, he has his own podcast and his own YouTube channel where he talks all kinds of comic book related material and all that kind of cool stuff. So if you get a chance, definitely go check him out, because he's really awesome, and he was really a joy to have on the show tonight. And as always, we got our Mr. Jeff Sloboda up there, who you can find on Rizzle and all that kind of cool stuff. And we can also see him also on the MCU's Bleeding Edge on YouTube as well, along with me. You can check me out on my YouTube channel under Cyberneticshark as well for my reviews, parodies, and all that kind of cool stuff. And I'm also on Rizzle too as well. I want to thank our one watcher tonight for watching us live.
Most definitely.
We appreciate you for watching and staying with us through this review, and we're looking forward to doing more of these Infinity Saga reviews for you guys and breaking them down for you. We will have a new one eventually soon, and it's going to be a lot of fun and joy, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the podcast, too.